Hey guys, wasn't feeling up to filming. If you've watched my last two videos, you know that some health stuff's been going on, so I'm not going to rehash here. This book talk could be a little off topic. It might be a little bit rambly, but we're going to go for it because I kind of have a lot of thoughts on this subject matter, and I don't know. I just haven't done a book talk in a while. So anyway, this book talk is going to be about popular books versus prestige books. So I'm going to define what both those are, where I'm coming from with my own definition of it, I guess, or borrowing obviously from other sources. So popular books are obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. They're the ones that are on, all the top lists, or all the booktubers or bloggers, and everybody's talking about them. They're the ones that usually get picked up for movies. So some examples would be like Big Little Lies, Why Is Everything Evading Me, Anne and the French Kiss series, The Girl in the Window, which is one of the newer ones. Like, there's so many of those. And prestige, by prestige, I mean more so classics and literary favorites. So the ones that not a lot of people read, they're not as popular because they're more dense and they're just more like they're seen as more prestigious literature, which is one of my biggest problems with all these labels on literature in the first place. Like, especially I've been reflecting on this a lot going back into the academia world. So when I was at university, which, in case you don't know, this is my year off. So I just finished honors bachelor degree a year ago, pretty much. So basically, when I was studying, English was not my major, but it was my minor. I was in a pre law program for my major and mix of philosophy. So I had quite a few different interests there. But when I was in English class, a lot of times, especially the first days, when you go to tutorial, which are basically like you have your lectures, which are the big, where everybody's with the professor, and then the tutorials are where you have TAs, so teaching assistants, and you're in like a group of, let's say, 30 from 600. So they're kind of like mini high school type classrooms. And in those, the teacher would ask you like what year you're in, what program you're in, your name, of course, and usually what was your favorite book. Something to do with literature because it's just an opener to see what, everybody's favorites are. And my last English class, which was actually an American literature class, I was the only person out of 15 who listed a contemporary title as their favorite book. And I listed Dying to Know You. In case you're new to my channel, you might not have guessed that. And everybody else listed classics. And I was just taken aback by that because I was like, why aren't people reading other books? But sometimes I didn't know for the class it was just because they wanted to look prestigious, or they honestly don't read anything outside of the school curriculum, so they would end up reading a lot of classics. I think most of it is a shame. Like, I feel people being ashamed. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to labeling books. Like, I feel like we fall almost into two camps. In academia, it's a lot of you want to read prestigious books. You want to be able to be like, yes, I've read that book. I get the references, all that. But then if you don't read, like a lot of people when they figure out I read, especially in university, they expect me to say titles like I'm reading all of Jane Austen's books or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with people who love doing that. But then when you say like you're reading like Big Little Lies or something, people almost look at you like, what a waste of time. Like, they just look down on it. It's kind of the same with chick lit, like those kind of books. It's like sometimes I feel like I can't even talk about them. Not necessarily on booktube, because obviously I can talk about whatever I want, but even in academic settings. And it's like Jane Austen's, I'm just using Jane Austen as a point of reference, not bashing her work, because I've not read a full Jane Austen novel. I really hope to read one soon. But just, going off that, Jane Austen's books do teach you lessons, and they teach you lessons about, you know, all different things. I'm not going to get into because obviously I haven't read one of her books. But a contemporary book can teach you different lessons because obviously it's more contemporary, but also lessons like whatever you read, it teaches me something. And I kind of hate this back and forth. So now, back to the beginning of that kind of spiel. Now, when I'm going back in, because in September I'm going back to school to do another degree, and it's just going back to an academic setting, how I'm going to carry myself when it comes to my reading. I'm more of a quieter person, so I wouldn't stand out too much for my reading, but nobody's directly insulted it. But I feel like sometimes judged for what I read. And I do, like, now I am moving more into general fiction, and I do read some books that would be considered literary, But also sometimes I just want a good juicy read. Like I just want to read something that is popular. And I think there's such a divide between that. Like I feel like whenever you're reading something popular, it's like the people who want to see the movies or they just want a good beach read. And then the people who read literary, it's like so separate. But I don't get why they can't converge. Like I think like if a book becomes a movie, that's kind of a converging point. I am losing my words here. Not feeling 100%, so don't mind me. But that's the only part where they kind of both come together. But at the same time, if a book gets made in the movie, half the time it's because it's popular, or it's been optioned before the book has been released. And when the book is released, it's wildly popular. A, due to knowing a movie's coming out, and B, due to probably more than likely the plot, because you wouldn't just read a book just because a movie's being made of it, more than likely. But I just hate all these titles on. It's like, why can't I read what I want to read? Like, I just feel so limited in that sense, and I feel like there's such a stigma. It's kind of like the chick lit books. Like, I don't even like using that term because it's kind of like I've read a lot of Jennifer Weiner actually talked about this in her memoir, which I really liked. But it kind of just sounds like demeaning. Like, it's like everybody can read it. Like, yes, they're geared towards women, but I read books. Like, I've read books that are geared towards men, and I still enjoyed them. It's just a different perspective. Like, do I really think most guys would probably want to read like Confessions of a Shopaholic? Maybe not, but there might be some that want to read that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I just feel like it definitely needs to be reworked. Like, we don't have men lit, like, or dude lit. It'd be like something like that, something stupid like that. I just feel like all these categories are just so annoying. Like, yeah. Like, I was just reading a list actually in Entertainment Weekly because I subscribed to that magazine, and they were talking about the hottest books of summer, and I really liked how they did it because they broke it up into categories. They had literary and popular all mixed together. And I think that whatever you're reading, you shouldn't be judged. Now, I the only thing I'd say that I'm too not as not as nice about is articles compared to books, because my sister will say like, well, I'm a reader, I read articles, but it's a bit different because readers typically synonymous with book reading, like novels and stuff like that. It's still good to read articles, but that's the only thing that I kind of am hemming and hawing over. I do read magazines, but it's not the same as being a reader. I feel like readers, like, I don't know what reading articles would be though then, but she doesn't read articles enough that she'd be even considered like a reader, with in the sense of that, like she reads them every once in a while. So I don't know, but that's the only thing that I'm a little bit harsh on. But when I'm coming from a place where I'm talking about novels, I don't get why there's this all these labels. Like, as people, they say not to label yourself, and like, I get having some labels like the genre they're in or the author, but we don't need to like. I don't know. This rant's kind of weird, but I just feel like especially when coming to judging people, the popular books get like crapped on, and the prestigious books never do, even if they aren't the best. Just because they're older, there's not a lot of hate. For example, The Secret Garden. I really hate that book, and I'm not ashamed to say that. That's the only book I've ever spark noted. I had to read it for grade 8 in all my years of education, including from elementary to university. That's the only book I've ever spark noted in my life. I hated it. And that is a beloved favorite of a lot of people. But if I say that, people get so offended because it's a classic. But if I went out here and said, you know what, I hated, this is not true, but I'm just going to use an example. I hated Big Little Lies. Really loved it. But if I went and said I hated it, I feel like there wouldn't be as much people be like, oh, like, I get it. Because it's contemporary and it's not a classic. I just don't like the divide, and it's kind of annoying. And I don't have very many concrete thoughts about this, but it's like, it's a lot of judgment and stuff not being valued as much just because it's an idea and a story that has been repeated. Well, of course, everything's been repeated, but it's different when you have different characters, because genuinely a story can be similar to another story, but it's really the characters that stick out. There's very few characters I feel like that even I can think of that are like one another, because each character is different, like each one of us is different. And that's what sets the books apart. I feel like if you're looking at any book, we should be looking to the characters, not necessarily the book. Like, I'm reading a book right now. a short story collection called You Think It, I'll Say It by Curtis Sittenfeld, or Sittenfeld. But that's basically seen as more of a popular one, but kind of literary. And then on the other hand, I'm reading a book called When Life Gives You Lululemons by Lauren Weisberger, which is the third the Devil Wears Prada book. Now, these two are seen in two different camps, but it shouldn't matter what I'm reading. I kind of lost topic there. I am not feeling 100%. And it just sucks that the book categories are so marked off. And I get certain markings, like if you're going to be like, if you like this, read this. But like, it's different when it's like you're labeling or being rude about one genre, or like being labeled popular over prestige. Back to the two books, I just remember my point. Back to the two books that I was reading. So the characters. Characters are a big thing for me. I love seeing character growth. And the characters in these books, like I'm not too far through When Life Gives You Lululemons, but I am more through the short story collection. And I just think that when you have a good character, you have a good foundation. Every book can teach you something different. I've learned so many little tidbits from books, stuff that I haven't even gone through in my life, but that a book has like kind of shown me what that's going to be like in my life potentially, or showed me scenarios that I might not ever be in, but somebody else might be in, and it shows me to be more sympathetic. And I think any book, whether it be popular or prestige, can definitely help with that. And maybe it's not that bad if it's being labeled still, but it's bad that it's so judgy about what we're reading. Like, even BookTube, like, it's not necessarily like people are judging what you're reading on here, but when people find out, usually, like, even me, like, I'm doing a BookTube channel and I don't talk about prestigious literature. It's like, ugh. But it's like, we're all just doing our own thing out here, and even books on BookTube that are considered popular, a lot of people love them. And that's amazing. And a lot of times, like, a lot of people in BookTube got into BookTube because of, like, Twilight, for example, which is a phenomenon. And almost everybody can say that that book isn't amazingly written, is not written, fantastically, but they all have a special place in their hearts. And I think the most important thing when it comes to books is not whether it's popular or prestigious, but it's whether that book touched your heart. And that can happen with any book. That could be a nonfiction book. That could be a book about the growing of grass. Or it could be a book like Big Little Lies. Either one can touch you in a certain way and change your life. So I don't get why there's such a divide between those two popular and prestige things, or popular prestige books. I think it's kind of unnecessary. I feel like we should just accept what other people are reading and get over it. And yeah, it's a little bit bothersome, and I thought I'd just talk about it because I didn't really know what to talk about this Sunday. But yeah, if you got to the end of this and understood any of that incoherent rambling, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. This week I'm planning on actually getting ahead of my filming. I don't think I'm going to be too sick. I'll see you guys later. Bye.